Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really foundational text on strategy, one attributed to Sun Tzu.
A classic.
Absolutely. We got a translation here, and importantly, it includes the translator's own preface and introduction, which gives us some, vital context.
That context is key.
Right. So our goal today is really to pull out the most insightful, the most enduring principles, ideas about conflict, strategic thinking, things that still resonate even now.
Definitely.
We'll dig into preparation, the nature of warfare itself, and that critical idea of understanding yourself and your opponent.
And it's great to revisit this kind of work. The edition we have here, the translator really aimed for clarity. It's paragraph numbered, which helps.
It makes referencing easier, yeah.
And they mention engaging with Chinese commentators. That's huge because these commentators add layers, centuries of interpretation, different applications.
Things a purely literal translation might miss.
Exactly. How these ideas were actually used and understood within Chinese thought.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the translator seems ready for criticism. They've been meticulous with source references.
Always a good sign. The intro also gives us a bit on Sun Tzu via Sima Qian.
The biographical note, yeah.
And it touches on dating the work, plus it debunks that myth about a monument for the King of Wu's entertainment.
Right, separating history from legend.
Yeah.
It's always tricky with ancient texts.
It is, and we get that historical context too, King Lu, his successor. It sets the scene for when these ideas likely emerged.
That backdrop, the late spring and autumn period, is crucial. Constant competition between states.
A fertile ground for strategic thinking, you'd imagine.
Precisely. These weren't abstract theories. They were born from high-stakes reality.
Okay, let's unpack some of this. One of the first things that jumps out is this anecdote about discipline. It's pretty stark.
Oh, yeah. The beheading of the concubines leading the companies.
Right. Sun Tzu orders it, even when the king tries to intervene. What does that tell us about his fundamental approach?
It's about absolute authority, isn't it? Once he accepts command, his word in military matters is final. It shows that clear orders and unwavering obedience are non-negotiable in his view.
No room for ambiguity.
None. Any hesitation, any disobedience could unravel everything. And the swift replacement of those leaders reinforces that decisive action to maintain control.
It's certainly uncompromising. Now, broadening out, the text mentions ancient views on war from the Lunyu, Shuqing, Aiqing.
Foundational Chinese texts.
Yeah. They seem to acknowledge military strength is necessary sometimes. How does that sit alongside, say, that later point in the Shiqi that sounds a bit suspicious about the title Great Warrior?
Well, you see a spectrum, right? These earlier texts, they recognize the practical need for defense, for order. The Shiqi maybe hints at an unease, the darker side of war.
Then what about King Yan of Su, the guy whose humanity brought him to destruction?
That adds another layer. It suggests that, well, maybe pure idealism or humanity without strategic sense can be fatal in a world of power politics. Pragmatism is needed.
It's a tough balance. Speaking of dynamics, Wu and Yu, their relationship seems like a perfect case study. Enemies, but then they cooperate in a storm.
It's a fantastic illustration. The storm shows pragmatism survival trumps rivalry in that moment.
But then they go back to fighting.
Exactly. And Yui eventually wins. It shows the cycles of power, the danger of complacency like Fu Chai's after his initial win.
He got overconfident.
Seems like it. And Wu Zisu's death highlights the political risks, advising rulers. The whole thing is a microcosm of Sun Tzu's principles in action. Offense, defense, alliances, long-term consequences.
It really brings the text to life. Now, back to the translation itself. The translator notes this idea of a logical flow in Sun Tzu's sayings, which commentators sometimes mess up.
Right, obscuring the original structure.
And Meisheng Yu tried to fix that, clarify the original meaning. Why is that logical sequence so important?
It suggests Sun Tzu isn't just, a list of wise sayings. There's a system there, a coherent philosophy.
Not just random proverbs.
No. When commentators break that flow, they risk misinterpreting things, weakening the overall strategy. Meisheng Yu trying to restore it shows the value placed on that underlying logic. That's its power.
Makes sense. And the text also tackles naive views on military strength, right? Warning that pure pacifism leads to vulnerability.
Definitely. It's very pragmatic. Sun Tzu operates in a world where conflict is a real possibility.
So wanting peace isn't enough.
Not as a strategy, no. Having adequate strength isn't inherently aggressive in this view. It's about deterrence, protection. It's a realistic take on power.
A stark reality. What about Confucius? The text mentions he supposedly didn't study military stuff, but then also times he seems to use armed force.
Yeah, that's a complex one. It highlights the gap between maybe philosophical ideals, and the messy reality of governing.
So he wasn't purely pacifist in practice.
It seems unlikely he advocated absolute nonviolence. Maybe his focus was preventing conflict through virtue, good government. But he likely recognized force might be needed sometimes for order or defense. It's nuanced.
Like many things, another point hammered home is practice. Military skill needs practice, like scholarship or administration. Don't let novices handle war.
Absolutely. Command is presented as a specialized skill. You need training, experience.
Lives are at stake.
Exactly. It's not for amateurs. The dangers are too high. It requires deep understanding, risk assessment, all honed through practice. Professionalism is key.
Okay, let's get into the real core here, the 5 constant factors in Chapter 1. First up, heaven. This is more than just weather, right? This general economy of heaven.
Oh, much more. It's the broader environment, the cyclical elements, seasons, yin and yang, maybe even timing, the larger forces you can't control but have to account for.
So understanding the bigger context, like today, maybe market forces or public opinion.
That's a great modern analogy. It's those overarching conditions that shape the strategic landscape.
Got it. Second factor, earth. Terrain. Distances, safety, open ground, narrow passes. How vital is this?
Absolutely fundamental. Knowing the ground intimately, where the advantages are, where the dangers lie, it dictates movement, logistics, tactical options.
Like knowing the difference between safe ground and deadly ground.
Precisely. Using the terrain effectively is a sign of a skilled commander. It's non-negotiable.
Third, the commander. 5 virtues listed. Wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, strictness. Slightly different from typical Confucian lists.
Yeah, the emphasis shifts a bit from military leadership. Wisdom for judgment, courage for action, strictness for discipline. These are paramount alongside sincerity and benevolence, which build troop loyalty.
Tailored for the battlefield.
Exactly. The unique pressures of command.
Fourth, method and discipline. Army organization, ranks, supplies, controlling costs. Seems like the nuts and bolts.
They are, but they're the backbone. Without organization, command breaks down. Without reliable supplies, campaigns fail. Without cost control, the state collapses.
So not just flashy tactics.
Not at all. Strategy relies on this logistical foundation. It's about efficient administration as much as battlefield brilliance.
And the fifth factor, moral law or doctrine. Unity between ruler and people.
Right. That shared purpose, that alignment. When people believe in the cause, understand the goals.
They fight harder, more unified.
Exactly. It builds internal strength, resilience, loyalty. It's a powerful, though intangible factor. Think about that shared buy-in, that belief in what you're doing.
Crucial. Okay, moving to deception and attack in Chapter 1. Classic Sun Tzu here. Appear unable when able, inactive when active, near when far. Use baits, feign disorder. Why is deception so central?
Because it manipulates the enemy's perception. It makes them misjudge, miscalculate.
Leading them into traps.
Precisely. Lure them out, attack their weak points, achieve surprise. Feigning disorder might tempt them into a rash attack. Appearing inactive hides your real preparations. It's about seizing the initiative by controlling what the enemy thinks is happening.
So in business, maybe a quiet product launch that's actually been planned for months.
Something like that, yeah. Misdirection. The chapter also talks about exploiting weakness. Attack the unprepared, appear where unexpected. That flows from deception, right?
Directly. If you deceive them successfully, you create those openings, those vulnerabilities.
Right. If they feel secure somewhere, that's where you might strike. If they don't expect you, your appearance causes confusion, disrupts their plans. It relies on good intelligence spotting those weaknesses.
And finally, for Chapter 1, the link between calculation and victory. Thorough planning leads to success. Acting without a plan is dangerous. Sounds fundamental.
It underpins everything. For Sun Tzu, war isn't gambling. It's calculated risk. You assess everything, terrain, enemy, yourself, objectives before acting.
Plan meticulously.
Or face the consequences. Acting blindly is just asking for defeat.
Chapter 2, waging war, really hits hard on the costs.
Oh.
Daily expenditure, the danger of long campaigns exhausting the state.
It's a very sobering perspective, isn't it? He lays out the economic burden, the human cost. It's not glorious, it's draining.
Which underlines why he pushes for swift victory.
Exactly. Minimize the bleeding of treasure, resources, lives.
And long wars cause deterioration, right? Dull weapons, low morale, depleted strength, creating chances for rivals.
Yes, it breeds instability. The army weakens, the state weakens, and others, rivals or internal factions, see an opportunity. Prolonged war can eat away at you from the inside out.
Sun Tzu argues against thinking war can be too short because it's so impoverishing. You mentioned Fabius Cumptator earlier.
Right, the delayer.
Yeah.
But Sun Tzu's point here isn't necessarily against delay tactically. It's against the economic ruin of long campaigns. Even a successful, drawn-out war can bankrupt you. Swiftness is almost always better from that perspective.
Logistics, again, don't need a second levy, forage from the enemy. Swift action, time over number.
Time is critical. Delays give the enemy time to prepare, to adapt. Swift action, efficient supply, ideally living off the enemy's land, maintains momentum, keeps the pressure on. Speed can achieve what numbers alone can't.
And that links to foraging locally, but also the downside. If the state is poor, contributions from afar impoverish the people more.
It's a vicious cycle, he points out. Foraging helps your logistics, weakens the enemy. But if your own state is already struggling, extracting more resources just deepens the hardship at home. It shows that holistic view, war affects everything.
So the main lesson of Chapter 2 is crystal clear. Swift victory. Avoid long campaigns.
That's the bottom line. Get it done quickly and decisively to minimize the damage.
Okay, Chapter 3. Supreme excellence. This is where we get that famous idea. Breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting is best.
The pinnacle of strategy.
How does that work in practice? It sounds almost paradoxical.
It's about creating a situation where fighting becomes unnecessary for the enemy. Maybe through diplomacy, psychological pressure, superior positioning, making their situation seem hopeless.
So they just give up or agree to your terms?
Essentially, it's about outthinking and outmaneuvering them so completely that combat becomes pointless or too costly for them. Think of maybe a competitor withdrawing from a market because your position is just too dominant.
Ah, okay. The chapter also says avoid fighting if you're slightly outnumbered, unless other factors compensate. Strategic flexibility again.
Right. Numbers aren't everything. Assess the whole picture. Terrain, morale, leadership. If you're outnumbered but have other key advantages, maybe wait. Choose your moment. Don't just charge in based on numbers alone.
And the danger of divided command, the ruler interfering from afar, hobbling the army.
A powerful image. Micromanagement from someone not on the ground is disastrous. The general needs autonomy to react to the situation in real time.
Trust the commander.
Absolutely. The sovereign sets the goal, the general figures out how to get there on the ground. Sun Tzu even contrasts governing a kingdom needing humanity, justice, with commanding an army, which needs opportunism, flexibility, different skill sets.
Chapter 3 wraps up with conditions for victory. Know when to fight, handle different forces, unified spirit, preparedness, general's autonomy, and that warning example of Huynh at the Fei River.
Yeah, those conditions are like a checklist for success. Huynh defeat is a classic case of ignoring them, overconfidence, underestimating the enemy. Even with superior numbers, ignoring strategy leads to disaster. His comment about underestimating the jinn shows that hubris.
Moving to Chapter 4. Security against defeat. Defense ensures security, offense brings victory, but knowing how to win doesn't mean you can win yet.
It's about sequencing. Secure yourself first. Make yourself invulnerable or as close as possible. That's defense. Only from that secure position can you launch an effective offense to actually achieve victory.
Build a strong foundation.
Exactly. Knowing the theory of attack isn't enough if your own house isn't in order.
And again, careful calculation, assessing the enemy before engaging, planning over impulse.
Always. Understand their strength, weaknesses, situation. Then compare it to your own. Then decide. It's rational, calculated action, not guesswork.
Chapter 5 gets practical. Subdivisions and signals. Using flags, drums, gongs to manage large armies like small ones.
Essential command and control. In the noise and chaos, you need clear signals to coordinate movement, advance, retreat. It allows a large force to act coherently.
Then we get Sheng and Qi, direct and indirect methods. Interchangeable, surprising, like Han Xin's move.
This is fundamental. Sheng is the direct, orthodox attack. Qi is the indirect, unorthodox surprise maneuver. The genius lies in using them together, fluidly.
Like a 1-2 punch.
Kind of, but more like they flow into each other endlessly. Feint with the direct, strike with the indirect, keep the enemy off balance. Han Xin's unexpected river crossing is a perfect example of Qi.
The chapter also talks about concentrating force, the grindstone and egg analogy. Focus power on weak points.
Classic principle. Find the enemy's vulnerability and hit it with overwhelming concentrated force. Even if you're weaker overall, you can achieve local superiority and breakthrough. Like finding the weakest link in a chain.
Energy and momentum too, the rushing torrent, the falcon's swoop, seizing the moment.
Yes, timing and impetus are key. Build up energy, like drawing a crossbow, then release it decisively at the right moment, like the falcon striking. Don't just attack randomly. Attack with momentum when the time is right.
And Chapter 5 revisits deception. Feign disorder to hide order, timidity for courage, weakness for strength. But it needs real discipline underneath.
Exactly. This isn't just lying, it's sophisticated manipulation of appearances. You need real order to convincingly fake disorder, real courage to feign timidity. The goal is to lure the enemy, make them misjudge, then strike suddenly. Rapid evolution, sudden rushes.
Chapter 6, weak points and strong. Appear where the enemy must defend, move where unexpected, builds on deception.
Logically follows. Once you've used deception, you exploit the openings. Force the enemy to defend vital points, then hit them somewhere else they didn't anticipate. Dictate the tempo.
Make the enemy move while you stay hidden. Concentrate your force while they divide theirs.
Classic maneuver. Remain unpredictable, observe them, compel them to spread out guarding everything, then hit one isolated part with your concentrated strength. Create local superiority.
And that idea that making the enemy prepare defenses actually makes them numerically weak, while compelling them to prepare makes you strong.
It's a brilliant inversion. By creating threats, real or perceived, you force the enemy to disperse their forces defensively. That makes each part weaker. You, knowing your plan, can remain concentrated and strike those weaker parts. It's about strategic manipulation, not just counting heads.
Even if outnumbered, you can prevent a fight through uncertainty, psychological warfare again.
Yes, make them doubt. Make them hesitant. If they don't know where or how you'll strike, they might freeze or delay, giving you an advantage or avoiding battle altogether on unfavorable terms.
The chapter ends saying warfare is like water, no constant shape. Adapt to the enemy, constant change.
Crucial point, no fixed formulas. You must adapt your tactics based on the enemy and the situation. Rigidity is death. Flexibility, like water finding its course, is key to success.
So, in business, that terrain might be the market landscape, consumer trends, regulations. You have to adapt.
Exactly. You can't use the same strategy in every market or situation. You have to understand the specific terrain and adapt your approach.
Chapter 7, Maneuvering. Dangers of forced marches, importance of terrain knowledge. Logistics matter.
Very practical. Pushing troops too hard leads to exhaustion, straggling. Knowing the terrain helps you move efficiently, avoid hazards. Reckless speed can backfire.
Trade-offs between speed and cohesion. Only go all out for speed in surprise attacks or retreats.
Right. Sometimes speed is vital, but often marching too fast outmaneuvers someone, breaks up your own forces, leaves commanders behind, weakens you overall. You have to balance speed with maintaining fighting strength.
More logistics. Long supply lines deplete resources. And understand neighbors before making alliances.
Transporting supplies is costly, and alliances aren't simple. You need to know the other player's motives and goals, or you could get burned. Strategy involves diplomacy, too.
Terrain knowledge, again, mountains, forests, swamps. Use local guides. Seems obvious, but vital.
Invaluable. Knowing the ground prevents ambushes, helps find good positions, aids navigation. Local guides possess that critical knowledge.
Dissimulation for success. Using captured territory to benefit troops. Linking tactics to strategy.
Concealing intentions. Dissimulation is key for surprise. And using captured resources keeps your troops supplied and motivated, sustaining the campaign. Connects immediate gains to the bigger picture.
Reading the signs. Moving trees, dust clouds, startled animals, keen observation.
The battlefield tells stories if you know how to read it. These subtle signs can reveal enemy movements, ambushes, troop types, requires vigilance and experience.
Psychological tactics. False alarms, night shouting, Tiandan's defense, and suspicious peace offers.
Undermining morale, creating fear, sowing confusion. These are tools. Tiandan used clever tricks. And yeah, a peace offer without real commitment. Probably a ploy to buy time or lower your guard. Be wary.
Interpreting behavior. Scattered camp means weak command. Angry officers mean tired troops. Unusual feeding means a last stand.
These details offer clues about the enemy's internal state, morale, leadership, desperation. Observing carefully can give you a real edge in predicting their actions.
And rewards punishments. Too many rewards means dwindling resources. Too many punishments means distress. Consistency is key.
Right. The pattern matters. Excessive rewards might be desperation. Frequent punishment signals break down. Fair, consistent application builds trust. Vacillation destroys it.
Okay, we're getting towards the end of the core chapters. Chapter 8 is brief, focusing on adapting to different ground types. Chapter 9, the army on the march.
Yes, more specifics on terrain. Speed over mountains, stay near valleys for resources. River crossings don't meet an invader while they're crossing. Position higher, face the sun.
Practical positioning. What about salt marshes or dry ground?
Salt marshes. Get near water and trees quickly. dry, level ground. Find accessible spots, high ground to your right and rear. Armies prefer high, sunny places, better visibility, drier conditions.
And things to avoid. Natural ovens, confined places, tangled thickets, searching for ambushes.
Yeah, avoid terrain that restricts movement or offers easy ambush spots. Always scout thoroughly, especially in dense areas like reeds or undergrowth where spies or ambushes could hide.
More signs. Movement in forests, screens in grass, startled birds.
All potential indicators of hidden enemy presence or imminent attack. Different dust patterns reveal chariots versus infantry. Even a silent camp can be suspicious. Might be an ambush.
Chapter 10 deals with different types of ground again. Accessible, hanging, narrow passes, precipitous heights, distant ground, and tactics for each.
Right. Accessible. Occupy high, sunny spots. Guard supplies. Hanging ground. Difficult to retreat from. Get into the mouths of defiles. Guard your rear. Narrow passes. Seize them first. Garrison strongly. Heights. Occupy first. Face downhill. Distant. If forces are even, it's hard to force battle. Easy to withdraw.
And the 6 calamities: flight, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, rout. All the general's fault.
Sun Tzu puts the responsibility squarely on the commander for these failures. They stem from the general's errors in judgment or leadership.
A good general doesn't retreat just because the ruler says so if conditions aren't right. Needs autonomy.
Yes, reinforces that idea. The general on the spot knows best when to fight or withdraw. Blind obedience to a distant ruler can be disastrous.
Importance of knowing your troops and the enemy. Overindulgence is as bad as pure strictness.
Need balance. Knowing capabilities is crucial. Treating troops well is good, but without authority and discipline, they become useless, like spoiled children.
And the 5 dangerous faults of a general. Recklessness, timidity, hasty temper, delicacy of honor, too easily provoked, over-solicitude, too worried about casualties.
Which can lead to ruin. Recklessness gets you killed. Timidity gets you captured. Hasty temper reacts poorly under pressure. False honor makes you fight unwisely. Over-solicitude leads to indecision. Need balance.
Chapter 11, the 9 situations. This is a big one. Classifying terrain based on strategic position.
Yes, crucial for understanding how troop psychology and strategic options change depending on where you are relative to home and the enemy.
Okay, quickly. Dispersive, home turf. Facile, shallow penetration. Contentious, key strategic ground. Open, easily traversed, intersecting highways, crossroads. Serious, deep in enemy land. Difficult, rough terrain. Hemmed in, confined, desperate. No escape but fighting.
That's the list. And each demands a different approach.
Right. Don't fight on dispersive, easy to scatter. Don't halt on facile, move deeper. Don't attack contentious, defend it if you hold it. Don't block enemy on open. Form alliances on intersecting. Plunder on serious. Live off land. Keep moving on difficult. Use stratagem on hemmed in. Fight hard on desperate.
Exactly. The terrain dictates the tactical imperative. Examples like Hannibal at Casillanum or Tian Dan show using stratagem when cornered.
When invading, deeper penetration builds solidarity. Forage in fertile country. Avoid pitched battles if unsure of morale.
Deeper in enemy territory. Troops know retreat is hard, so they stick together more. Foraging keeps them supplied. If morale is shaky, focus on winning their trust, not forcing a big battle yet.
And the psychology of desperation, cornered soldiers lose fear and fight fiercely.
The death ground principle. When there's no escape, survival instinct kicks in and soldiers fight with unexpected ferocity. You can sometimes create this situation for your own troops.
Like Chao Kuei's example, even a small state can leverage desperation.
Right. When everything's on the line, unexpected strength can emerge.
The ideal army acts like one body. Unity prevents flight better than just blocking escape routes.
Unity, shared purpose, good leadership. That internal cohesion is more reliable than just physical barriers to prevent troops from running.
How to use strong and weak troops based on terrain.
Exploit the ground to maximize the effectiveness of different unit types or skill levels. Put your best where they're needed most. Use terrain to protect weaker elements.
Leading the army like guiding one person. Pen Chao's deception. Don't reveal your plan.
Skillful command makes complex maneuvers seem effortless. Pan Chao's trickery shows deception in action. Keeping plans secret prevents leaks and maintains surprise.
And the ultimate tactic on desperate ground. Convince your troops survival is hopeless, so they fight with maximum effort.
Burn the boats, break the cooking pots, make it clear there's no going back. It taps into that ultimate survival drive.
Chapter 12, the use of spies. Crucial but costly if ignored.
Absolutely essential. Ignorance of the enemy is too expensive. Intelligence gathering via spies is paramount for planning.
5 types. Local, inward converted, doomed, surviving. Each has a role.
Yes. Locals know the terrain. Inward are enemy officials you've bribed. Converted are enemy spies you've turned. Doomed are your spies fed false info to mislead the enemy. Expendable. Surviving are those who return with real intel.
Need intimacy, subtlety, treat them well. Historical examples like Huynh.
Need trust, clear communication, clever handling. Benevolence and straightforwardness build loyalty. Examples like Huynh or Liu Ya show how effective converted spies could be in ancient times.
Finally, Chapter 13, Attack by Fire, 5 ways. And responses, wait for the right moment.
Fire can attack soldiers, stores, baggage arsenals, or supply lines. Need be ready to counter, don't attack uphill against the wind, wait for dry weather, opportune moments, need countermeasures for your own fires.
Like the yellow turbans learned the hard way. Vulnerability in low-lying marshland.
Right, encampments there are vulnerable to fire or flood. Need smart site selection.
Importance of enterprise. Seize opportunities, reward merit.
Stagnation is dangerous. Good leaders plan, good generals cultivate resources and reward those who perform well. Keep the momentum going.
And one last plug for espionage, critical for decisive action. The closed door and chink of light analogy.
Yes, spies provide that crucial chink of light, that piece of intel that allows you to act decisively instead of fumbling in the dark behind a closed door. It connects back to the need for calculation and knowledge.
Wow, we've covered a huge amount of ground there. The depth of thought is incredible.
It really is, and so much still feels relevant.
So to wrap up this deep dive into Sun Tzu, the key takeaways are pretty clear, aren't they?
I think so.
We've seen this critical importance of preparation, discipline, that unwavering discipline, understanding your opponent inside out, adapting to circumstances.
That flexibility, yeah.
And the power of deception, plus that constant reminder of how costly conflict is and why swift, decisive outcomes are paramount.
It's really about minimizing the need for actual fighting through superior strategy and planning.
Right. Which leads to a final thought for you listening. Considering this ancient wisdom, how might these principles, knowing yourself, knowing the opponent, exploiting weakness, planning carefully apply to challenges you face, are they as relevant in, say, business or maybe even creative projects as they were in ancient warfare?
It makes you think about the fundamental nature of competition and strategy, doesn't it? Wherever it occurs.
Definitely something to ponder. If you're intrigued, digging into the full text, exploring the commentaries, the historical context, there's so much more depth there.
For sure. Researching the era, the different interpretations over centuries, it's fascinating.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.